This is a Quadro GPU. It's not designed to play games, yet it still can, and naturally, as this is an older graphics card, it's perfect for our new series, the GPU Vault, where we take a look at older graphics cards to determine if they're still e-waste. Given the age of this K4000, you'd be forgiven for thinking it's e-waste, but that isn't the case, as this will still play some modern esports games, not modern AAA ones, they won't run, believe me, because it's essentially a GTX 650 Ti with 3GB of VRAM and a 192-bit memory bus, so this will help you with texture settings, particularly in games like GTA 5 for instance, as 2GB GPUs can start to struggle in that game. As we know, this amount of VRAM will hold up in esports and older titles. But to find out how well this Quadro really gets on, we've tested it at 1080p in our Ryzen 7800X3D system. Yes, it's a super overkill processor for this GPU and I don't recommend pairing it with it. An affordable second-hand 4th gen Xeon or i7 will be perfect with a GPU like this, which is probably the CPU you're going to find in a workstation with this anyways. But for drivers, we've tested using the latest Quadro release version. I don't know what it is, it'll be down there. With that being said, let's get into the benchmarks. Valve games such as Left 4 Dead 2 are highly optimised. Yes, they are kind of old, but a Quadro like this won't have any problems playing them. Set to high with 2x MSAA, the Quadro K4000 gets on very well, providing 162 FPS on average, with let's say the 1% low has some room for improvement, but overall, it's not terrible and it's more than playable. You could just lock this game to 60 FPS and get a very smooth experience. GTA 5 set to the high preset looks pretty good, especially with the very high textures thanks to the 3GB of VRAM on this GPU, and with FXAA the game still looks quite decent. At 45 FPS, it's similar to a Xbox One PS4 level of experience, with a slightly smoother frame rate, and the 1% lows are looking okay at 31, so performance as a whole, if you were to play on like a controller or something, is really not too bad in GTA. The legacy performance API on Fortnite is built on DirectX 11, which is perfect for this GPU. It's Kepler, so there's no DX12, or at least feature level support for that. The averages are looking decent at 110 FPS. The problem is the constant stuttering in this game. I suspect this is down to the driver because Kepler GPUs usually perform pretty decently in Fortnite when it's set to the legacy performance API, so I'd probably give this game a miss here. The low preset in Rainbow Six Siege is what most competitive gamers are going to be going for, so there's no problems there. The 50% render res, I'm not quite sure. However, we certainly needed that because this GPU only pushed out 49 FPS on average with a, let's say, smooth 1% low of 35. So you're not exactly going to be winning any tournaments with a GPU like this, but it will play Rainbow Six Siege, and I'd say it's the bare minimum. Skyrim Special Edition defaulted to high, and I'm not quite sure as to why, because we only got 33 FPS on average, but the 1% low is very smooth at 30 frames per second. Now this tells me it's basically sort of an Xbox One type of experience here, but you can also mod it to a higher extent on PC, so you are getting some benefits there, and if you were to play on controller, I suspect the 30 FPS would probably be fine for a lot of people, especially if you're at this budget. Halo Master Chief Collection was kind of disappointing. We didn't even get 60 FPS on the original preset. Now, most old graphics cards will get way more than this, so I think this is down to sort of a driver thing going on here if I had to suspect anything, but 56 FPS is still more than playable in my opinion, and the 1% lows are also looking pretty smooth, so there isn't any major problems, it's just a bit disappointing. To carry on with that disappointment, Cyberpunk on the absolute lowest at 1080p is, yeah, it's just good enough for 12 frames per second. Now, this is not playable by any stretch of the imagination, but the 1% lows are at 11, so the frame time is smooth, I guess. It's like the only win I can take away from this. The K4000 is back to its winning ways in Half-Life 2, set to the very high preset with 2x MSAA, and we're getting around 290 FPS on average. The frame times have room for improvement at 152, but you could just lock the frame rate to 60 if you've got 60 Hz and you just call it a day. The game will run absolutely fine like this. But Half-Life 2 had already been out for almost a decade when this GPU released, so this is to be expected. The K4000 provides a very playable frame rate in Counter-Strike 2 at 70 FPS. CS pros probably won't really like this performance, but hey, it is playable. The 1% lows at 46 are okay, they're nothing to write home about, but this GPU launches it and plays it decently better than the other esports games, so yeah, I'd say that's a win. At Full HD, you're going to be having a very hit or miss gaming experience, because on one hand you've got games like Cyberpunk 2077, which will launch and technically run on this GPU, but not at a very playable frame rate, let's put it that way. And some of the OG games we like to test, like Skyrim Special Edition and Halo Master Chief Collection, didn't achieve 60 FPS, which is not so great. Dial back your expectations and play older games like Half-Life 2 and Left 4 Dead 2. Yeah, this GPU is going to be providing a ton of frame rate. Well, it should do, because Half-Life 2 launched like 8 years before this GPU, so yeah, I'll be surprised if it was performing badly here. And then when it didn't reach 60 FPS, it's not like the performance was absolutely woeful. It was still playable, but just not ideal. However though, the 3GB of VRAM in this is surely a lot better than what you'd get with a 650 Ti, which is either 1 or 2GB, which allowed us to use the very high textures in GTA, which really goes a long way. I'd rather have, let's say, around 45 FPS and really sharp textures compared to around 60 and the textures looking like mush. But that's just my opinion. Opinions aside, is this GPU e-waste? No. That's kind of, well, a bit of a juxtaposition there, because it is my opinion, because I don't think this is e-waste. Of course, you can still play games on it, it still has a use, meaning it's not waste. Old Quadros like this are found in old HP and Dell workstations. In fact, that's where I got this GPU. So if you needed a graphics card to tide you over until you upgraded to, let's say, a modern budget graphics card, like an RTX 5060, it will still play games and play some pretty decent ones as well. By the way, if you want to see how the RTX 5060 gets on, I've got a video up there for you. With that being said, I'll catch you in the next one.